Hi, it's Kate here again, Friday afternoon, and I just thought I would come to you and have a little bit of a chat about a question that's been sort of bouncing around in my mind, and probably because I've been delivering the Tuning Into Kids parenting program, and just raises some questions, I suppose, about what do we want for our kids? So I suppose one of the things that often gets sort of raised when I meet new families, and when we're talking about whether it's does my child meet criteria for an autism diagnosis, or does my child have anxiety, and those kinds of questions. Early in the piece, often people are sort of wanting, I suppose, answers to like questions like that they have on their mind, and they might go along to professionals such as psychologists or GPs or pediatricians or psychiatrists, trying to get answers about what might be happening for their child. But then I suppose the next part of the question, whether that gets answered or not, is what do we want for our kids? So what are those things that we really want for our kids, essentially? What do we want their lives to be like? So that's where I kind of think about that next step, which is kind of going, we want our kids to, do we want them to be happy? Do we want them to be well adjusted, whatever that means? Do we want them to have success? Again, by whose standards, and what does that mean? Do we want them to fit in? Sometimes you hear that, I just want my kids to fit in, I just want them to be accepted, and those kinds of things. And sometimes those two things, particularly autistic kids, can go maybe not in hand. So fitting in and being like everybody else might be something that your kid is not like. Maybe they're so different that they stand out. And is that not a good thing to have happen as well? So sometimes, we stand out for the wrong reasons. Sometimes we stand out for all the right reasons. So I suppose thinking, what do we want for our kids? For me personally, I think about what I want for my kids is I want them to feel like they like themselves. I want them to feel a sense of confidence in who they are as a human being. I really want them to be able to have emotion regulation skills. So I want them to be able to ride the ups and downs of life, and know that they have some skills to be able to travel that, and that they'll be okay. It doesn't mean they're going to have all the answers. It doesn't mean that they, are never going to feel distress. That's not sort of the aim in life, and it's not something that's realistic to expect we can provide for kids, no matter how much we want to protect them from difficult kind of things in life. But I think if they have those skills of emotion regulation, if they're able to practice looking after themselves, they understand the importance of self-care, then those are skills that I think I'll feel really comfortable as a parent, that they'll be okay no matter what kind of happens. If they like themselves, they're confident in and of themselves, they're likely then to attract people that'll resonate with that. They'll have a good radar when it comes to friends and work and all those big decisions that come later on. So I kind of think, when we're talking about families coming into therapy, those sorts of things, I think, what do we want for our kids? And if they're anything like what I want for my kids, then we start to go, okay, how can I support them to have that? So part of that is skill development. Certainly it's what, sometimes therapists provide kids with is tools to help with that emotion regulation. But it's a lot more than that. So it could be things like looking at their self-esteem, looking at that whole area of self-talk and self-confidence and self in general. Who am I? Especially in the work that I do, where kids have an autism diagnosis. Some of them know that they're autistic, and some are yet to find out that their differences that they may be beginning to be aware of has a name. And certainly I think knowing who you are, why you think the way you think, why you like the things the way you like the things that you do, it can be really important for kids to have a sense of shared understanding of that, of a sense of belonging, especially because there's a whole community of people that are autistic and love their autistic differences and are celebrating those autistic differences. If kids don't know that there's that community out there, they may feel that their differences, and again, if they're in a minority, which is quite likely if they're going to mainstream school or mainstream high school or TAFE or uni or whatever it might be, that they're in a bit of a minority, and those differences may stand out, maybe they don't, maybe they're able to mask them and cover a lot of those differences up, but on the inside they may feel less than, or they may feel different in a not so positive way. Depending on their experience and depending upon those things like, their sense of self, their sense of celebration about who they are, and their emotion regulation skills and what kind of tools they have as well. So I suppose, one of the things I encourage you to think about if you're looking out for your child, if you're parenting a child, particularly with a child that is neurodivergent, which means they're perhaps not neurotypical, they're perhaps autistic, or perhaps they have ADHD or dyslexia or something like that makes them process information differently, it makes them respond to things differently, to be thinking about, how we can, encourage and celebrate those differences, and how we can model those kinds of things that we want for our kids, which is that self-love, that being proud of who they are. And I suppose so that for parents, that means we need to have a good understanding about what that is as well. How do we celebrate ourselves? How do we show that in front of our children? Do we ourselves have good emotion regulation skills? Because kids learn from watching us as well. Are we prepared to do some skill work so that we can pass that along? Or are we there to celebrate their hard work as they go along that journey? Sometimes we have very high expectations for our kids and very high goals and lofty dreams for them. And we have to be really mindful that we're prepared to put in the same that we're asking of them, especially if they're already living in a neurotypical world when they don't have all the neurology that other kids already come equipped with. If they're having to learn some of this stuff that is not natural and intuitive for them, then we need to be mindful that we keep family a really healthy, safe space that they can be themselves, that we can encourage them, that there's a reason that we're asking them to learn these skills, and we're modeling those skills as well for them. So just a couple of ideas that are kind of bouncing around in my mind as we think about our jobs as parents to guide, to have hopes for, but also to help shape kids into what we want for them. The other thing that's really, really important is asking kids as well, is not forgetting to do that kids have great ideas. It's really important that whatever goals that they have, that we have for them, that we're talking with them as well, making sure that we're listening to them about what they want at any stage of their lives, and helping them reach those goals as well. Sometimes they'll take longer than kids realize. Sometimes there'll be ups and downs along the way, but while we're doing that, we'll be teaching them those great emotion regulation skills and resilience and emotional intelligence and all those things. So be just thinking about that. If you're asking and wanting things for your kids, how are we modeling that? How are we working on ourselves at the same time, so they're not always feeling like they're having to put in and do those things? So just a little bit of a thought, especially for parents, I suppose, who are parenting neurodivergent kids and autistic kids, because sometimes they're doing a lot of work, and already they're doing a lot of work if they're going to school and high school and things like that. So be thinking about how we can support that journey, but also about thinking what we can do to help guide that as well. So thank you if you've been watching me live this afternoon. I have to head off quickly because my daughter is in a school assembly this afternoon. So I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and I will talk with you really soon. Thanks for watching. Bye.